Welcome to The Read Along,
a mini book club for your ears.
I'm your host, Scott.
I'm your other host, Anita.
And join us on a journey through a good book,
one chapter at a time.
Have you ever watched a movie and wondered, could that have been better? Well, fortunately, there's a place you can go to find out. I Have Some Notes is a podcast where Greg Beaver, Liam Creswick, and me, Scott C. Bourgeois, discuss movies and try to punch them up. You can find it right now wherever good podcasts can be found. Front-loaded apologies if the acoustics on this episode sound a little different than prior. We ended up having to move out of our usual recording studio in the basement.
Our luxurious basement studio.
And have temporarily set up in the kitchen, which is unfortunately a little more... spacious and has a little more reverb, so it might sound a little different for this and a couple upcoming episodes. We're going to try to sort things out more permanently.
If we sound like we're recording in a kitchen,
it's because we are.
We're recording in our kitchen.
We are absolutely 100% recording in our kitchen.
This is entirely my fault. My work setup had to change, and so we had to rearrange the basement a little, and we lost our little recording space.
Yeah, so you can blame that on Nita.
Yep, my bad.
Hopefully everything still sounds fine, though.
I think so.
Also, new book.
Yes! You smell that? New book smell.
Yeah. Getting into it with the start of a murder mystery, which we have not done in a while.
No, I'm excited.
Not a proper murder mystery. So, we kind of decided to shake up the genres, do something we haven't done in a bit with a detective story. This one kind of caught our eye because, frankly, it just seemed quirky.
Yeah. We were wandering around the bookstore, and Scott had picked several, and I was searching through what he had picked to see if I liked anything. And when it came down to it, I went, I want the Queen Detective. It seems the most fun. So here we are.
Yeah, the Queen as Miss Marple kind of had a little bit of an appeal.
Well, it sounds fun.
Certainly intrigued us enough to decide to give it a go. This is actually the first of a trilogy of books. I don't know if it's going to be an ongoing series down the road, but I do know that there are two more that are Her Majesty the Queen Investigates. The other two are The Three Dog Problem and A Murder Most Royal.
Ooh.
They're all from within the last few years, though. Windsor Not came out 2020. Three Dog Problem is 21. Murder Most Royal 22. Maybe there'll be another one this year. We'll have to.
Oh, maybe.
We'll have to bug S.J. Bennett about that and find out if we like this one.
I already like this one, and we're only one chapter in.
Yeah, we're going to be reading it for another 30 or so weeks. So brace yourselves. S.J. Bennett is a reasonably prolific writer. Apparently, mostly the author of young adult and kids novels.
Oh, okay, cool.
So this is her foray into slightly more adult fare, I guess.
Awesome. I'm pretty sure I've never read anything else of hers. I think this is my first book of hers.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Always good to discover new authors.
Absolutely.
For us, not necessarily a new author, but like an author we have not personally experienced. Hopefully you haven't experienced, so this is a good experience for all of us. Yeah.
I'll be honest, I have to really, really enjoy a work to want to go back to the same author over and over and over again. I like a diverse group. I like reading new and different things from all over the place and all kinds of people, right? So this is going to be right up my alley, I think.
Indeed. But with that preamble and with no chapter to recap.
It's true.
Let's maybe dive right into chapter 1 of The Windsor Knot by S.J. Bennett.
This was the perfect appetizer to the rest of this book.
Yeah, decent cold open.
Right? Your standard mystery cold open. We have this scene. We're missing large chunks of information. We're introduced to a bunch of people that we know nothing about.
A couple suspicious characters.
Right? A couple things have been seeded.
Indeed.
Yeah. No, it's good. I don't want to say it's standard opening for a mystery, but it is, but in a good way. Like, this is a good way to open a mystery.
I'm intrigued that we have two perspective characters in the first chapter.
Yeah.
Because I kind of expected that we'd be mostly in Her Majesty's brains because she's the detective.
Yes.
But we're not, because we are also in one of the, I'm going to call them suspects, quote unquote.
Probably.
Brains. Masha, one of the members of the Russian delegation that's currently attending the festivities at Windsor Castle.
Yes.
And we kind of get her perspective at breakfast, and that intrigues me because it's a different perspective character in a mystery novel.
Right. Well, because we open with Her Majesty.
Yeah.
Right? Talking to us through her point of view, right? As she's out for her morning ride, which is very queenly.
Yeah. Enjoying Windsor Castle, her favorite of her castles.
Yes.
I wish I had multiple castles so that I could be choosy about which was my favorite. But I am not Her Majesty the Queen, so.
Exactly. Yeah, so we start out with the Queen on her morning ride, having her morning thoughts about things.
Indeed.
Right?
And already aware that something has gone awry.
Yes.
Because she is very observant and notes when the household is in a state.
Mm-hmm.
And so knows right up front someone has died in the night.
Yeah. Well, and I would imagine that if someone dies in her castle in the evening, like overnight, someone would tell her in the morning. It's kind of important, don't you think?
You'd think that, but she actually says in her point of view, like, she had to kind of wring it out of her household staff because they didn't want to upset her with the details.
Yes, but she's the queen.
Yeah, you don't say no to the queen.
No.
The perspective might have been more, if she doesn't notice, let's just keep it on the DL. But if she specifically asks about it, you don't say no.
No.
Yeah.
Why would you? Also, this isn't, the real Her Majesty the Queen. This is Detective Queen.
This is fictional detective.
This fictional
Her Majesty
detective
the
queen.
That's true.
So sorry. Fictional detective Her Majesty the Queen.
Almost certainly the title of this episode.
It's just a beautiful collection of words right there. By the end of this book, her title is going to be unreasonably long. I know it.
Then we, as I mentioned, switch to a different perspective. And we go to Masha and her perspective at a very fancy breakfast or brunch.
Yeah.
With some of the other mucky mucks who were at this soiree the night before. That includes other suspicious characters, including her husband, Yuri.
Right?
A woman by the name of Meredith Gostelow, who makes a fabulous entrance.
More than fashionably late.
Indeed.
But I don't know who she is yet.
I don't know who she is either, but she jumped out as someone to pay attention to.
Well, she was also given a name.
Indeed.
Not everyone at breakfast is given a name.
No, we get some titles. The racing manager is there. The former Russian ambassador is in attendance, which makes sense. He'd be there because there's this Russian delegation in town. The Archbishop of Canterbury is attending breakfast as well.
And Sir David Attenborough.
And, of course, Sir David Attenborough.
You don't need to give a title because it's
perhaps
Sir David Attenborough.
Perhaps the most suspicious person of all at this luncheon.
Well, by the end of this chapter, he could be. We know so little.
It's true.
Through these few pages.
Is it wrong that I'm deeply hoping that Attenborough is a recurring character in this novel?
That would be wonderful.
If you're going to fill a novel with fun historical tidbits and people like that, why not have...
And a fictional story that includes real people in it.
Why not have David Attenborough?
Sure, why not? It's great.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And it tracks to me that he'd be at a fancy soiree at Windsor Palace.
Of course. He's Sir David Attenborough.
Indeed.
He probably narrated the whole thing.
Just because you said that, the rest of this book is going to be narrated in his voice.
You can't help but read it in his voice. I love it.
Mind. There you go.
All right. So, based on what we picked up from our snippets at breakfast, obviously there was a to-do last night, right?
Yes.
A big party. My guess is something salacious has happened.
I mean, one could assume that some salacious activity took place because
Indeed.
there's always, in a murder mystery like this, in a grand place where there are a bunch of like suspicious characters moving around, everybody's got something to hide, right?
Exactly.
So something went on at this soiree, not just including the mysterious death.
Right?
We just don't know what yet.
Because there was like a hint of flirting.
Yep.
There was a little bit of like blushing embarrassment, which leads me to believe something salacious happened. Clearly something went wrong because someone is dead.
Yes. And I mean, we know
possibly
from...
right because someone is dead?
Fair enough. We also know from the blurb that it's murder. So
yes, exactly.
Like, spoiler alert, someone was murdered.
Well, we know it's murder, but yeah. Normally people don't just randomly turn up dead and have a murder mystery written about them, so something went wrong.
Well, and for the record, and I'm sure we've said this before, knowledge from the blurb does not count as foreknowledge from the book.
No, definitely not.
So we are not reading ahead just because we know what the book is about.
Yes. Everybody's hiding something.
Yes.
right? Because that's how it works. I know so little.
Well,
Like,
yeah.
everything
cold
I know
open.
is just vague.
Yeah, it's the cold open. So we don't have much to go on yet.
Mm-hmm.
Now would be, of course, a terrible time to make an irresponsible accusation of murder in the accusing parlor, which, to be fair, has been locked and shuttered for a couple books now.
Oh, at least a couple books.
It needs
now.
to get proper dusted off. So we definitely...
I'll ring the maid.
I'll tell you what, we definitely shouldn't go into the accusing parlor today because it's filthy in there. There's sheets on all of
Dusty
the
everywhere.
all the furniture.
Ugh.
Like it needs the chimney needs swept. We'll get on that. We'll get into the accusing parlor soon enough, but we'll make sure it's cleaned up before we get back in there.
Yes, exactly. So I am under the impression that the vast majority of our breakfast guests do not know that someone is dead.
No, and that's certainly the impression you get because a footman arrives shortly before the end of the chapter. Just when Masha's waxing about how wonderful this experience has been, how it's like a fairy tale with the castle and the servants and the grand soiree that happened the night before. And then a footman kind of like comes in and whispers something in her husband Yuri's ear. And he's immediately like, oh no, and gets up and leaves.
Yeah,
and
like,
we can
not a word to anybody. He just up and leaves.
We
right?
can assume that that's him being informed of the murder.
That was my guess
or
as
the,
well.
the death, because at this
Yeah.
time...
Everyone thinks he
Everyone-
died in his sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we know that from the blurb, that everyone thinks he died in his sleep. But yeah, the tone at breakfast is so cheerful and slightly hungover that, like, there's no way that the pall of death is over these people, right? They're too happy to have known that someone has died. And clearly her marriage is in trouble, right? Based on these handful of sentences.
Well, not necessarily. She and her husband have a relationship. We don't know too much about it.
They exchanged 0 words in this chapter. And
Fair.
she ends by lamenting that she's going to die old and alone.
And she also was like, she was the one making flirty looks at like the racing manager, right? And she was kind of lost in her own thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
There was mention of a drunken tango the night before.
Indeed.
So I don't know that that's still breakfast flirting. That might have been the booze talking from the night before.
That's fair.
Right?
And yeah, like we don't know for sure that their marriage is on the rocks, but yeah, you can
It kind of feels like it.
infer that
I mean,
something's
I
up.
absolutely could be wrong. Again, first chapter, very vague.
Again, you need a bunch of suspicious characters who have things to hide so they can be cagey.
Yeah.
When the queen comes around and starts asking them pointed questions. So
Oh,
I'm actually wondering, because the blurb does mention that the queen is working with her assistant personal secretary, who
Yes.
we have not met yet. I assume we'll meet them in the next chapter or two.
Oh yeah, probably.
So is this going to be more like a Nero Wolfe thing, where the queen is like masterminding things from behind the scenes, but someone else is actually going out and doing the investigating because it's the queen?
Yeah. It's a little awkward for the queen to come up to you with a notepad and start asking questions,
Yeah.
right?
So I'm actually thinking that might be a little more what we're getting to, but
Maybe.
we'll have to see.
I very much doubt that this is going to be the case, but it would amuse me a great deal to find out that Windsor Castle is full of like secret passages and spy nooks and listening holes, and the queen just creeps around behind the scenes spying on people.
Basically, it's the Clue Mansion.
Yeah, basically, except it's Windsor Castle.
Except it's Windsor Castle. I mean, it is a castle, so
Who knows?
who knows?
Again, I very much doubt that's the case, but it would amuse me if it was.
Indeed.
I'm hoping to learn more about this party last night. My guess is that is our inciting event, right? It has something to do with the party.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll probably learn more about the party as the investigation goes on.
Yes, exactly.
And find out, like, who was there, what they were doing, when they came, when they went, because it'll all factor into the mystery, probably.
It'll all fall into place.
Indeed.
Probably.
But we don't really have much to go on. We're not going to make an irresponsible first chapter accusation at this time.
Very unlike us.
To not make an accusation in the first chapter, indeed.
We're all about irresponsible speculation over here.
It's true. But we'll let this one sit for now.
Yeah. Like I said, this is an appetizer chapter.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of info in it yet.
No guarantee that we won't make irresponsible accusations in the second chapter.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. But we'll shut things down here for now. A bit of a shorter episode, but
A short little chapter.
short little chapter just to kind of wet our whistles.
Yeah.
Already excited to see where things go next.
I really am.
Yeah, so we'll wrap things up there. You'll want to read up on Chapter 2 in time for next week. In the meantime, as I did mention last episode, and in the last couple episodes, we are no longer members of the Alberta Podcast Network. We are currently flying solo, but we do have a sort of sibling podcast in I Have Some Notes, because I'm also a member of that crew. And we just launched a Patreon, going independent there as well. You can check that out at patreon.com/IHaveSomeNotes if you'd like to support my podcasting endeavors. Supporting them indirectly supports the read-along.
Yeah.
So it is...
Also, I really like their podcast over there.
Not just because you've been on it a couple times.
Well, no, and not just because my husband is on it, because I genuinely like the idea of I Have Some Notes. It's a good podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, by all means, throw some support their way, because it indirectly supports us over here.
Indeed. And with that said, we will say that you can also give us a little rating and a review on your podcatcher of choice, because that helps us out.
It sure does.
You can also find us on social media.
Yeah, we are on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Goodreads, because we bookish that way. We are at The Read Along on most of those.
Yeah,
we try to be easy to find.
Wherever we could get it.
Yeah.
You can also send us an email.
Yes, we are thereadalong@gmail.com.
And with that said, as always, we love you very much, and we'll see you next time.
She'll start a counter if she ever says, "We are not amused."
Thank you for joining us on The Read Along with your hosts, Anita and Scott Bourgeois. All Read Along music is by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. Cover art is by Aaron Beaver. Be sure to join us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Read Along, and check out our group on Goodreads.com.